Hello from BriForum 2014 in London. I'm Brian Madden, and I kicked off BriForum yesterday morning with a keynote presentation about the state of the desktop virtualization industry. And several people asked for a recording of that presentation, but we actually didn't make one in the main keynotes, so I've gone into an empty presentation room now during one of the breaks, and I figure I'll just sort of do about a 10-minute recap of what I covered yesterday in the opening keynote. So I talked about, this BriForum conference. This is our independent desktop virtualization conference. This is actually the 15th show, the 15th BriForum we've done. And over the years, we've tracked the desktop virtualization industry as it evolved from pure Citrix, MetaFrame to presentation server. Then we got into desktop virtualization, VDI, consumerization, enterprise mobility management. And in my opening keynote yesterday, I talked specifically about the desktop virtualization industry and just kind of looked at the latest trends. The way that I kick off the 2014 conversation about desktop virtualization is I first talk about what we discussed last year in 2013. 2013, Gabe Knuth, Jack Madden, and we published the book, The New VDI Reality. So whenever I was traveling around the world last year talking about desktop virtualization, in 2013, I talked about there's three major new shifts in the desktop virtualization industry. The first shift of 2013 was we now have storage, which supports persistent desktop image use. So, there's always these conversations about non-persistent VDI versus persistent VDI. I've always said that I like VDI to be persistent because, after all, that's what our traditional desktops and laptops are. Every user has his or her own disk image. And I felt that if you try to move from the persistent to the non-persistent VDI, that it was very difficult to do. So what's cool, in the old days, of course, persistent storage for VDI was very, very expensive. But now, thanks to various storage virtualization, flash, SSD, all sorts of different advantages, or I should say advances we can now do VDI today, very high performance, for the same price, regardless of whether it's persistent or non-persistent. So that was a big game changer in 2013. Another big game changer in 2013 was we now have GPU support for our remote desktops and our VDI desktops. And a lot of people always say, oh, GPU support, isn't this just for high-end, CAD, CAM type users? Do regular sort of rank and file users actually care about this? And the answer is yes. I mean, every laptop, even your cheap low-end laptop, has a GPU built into it. And as you know, the Windows OS, there's Flip 3D, there's animated everything, transparencies, Aero Glass. Even the web, we've got YouTube, Flash, Unified Communications, video. Windows desktops are made to use GPUs. And in the past, we were not able to put GPUs into our VDI environments. But with the technology coming out from Microsoft, Citrix, VMware last year, the technology coming out from AMD and from NVIDIA, we now can put GPUs into our VDI platform. And that's a very important key. The third major trend that I looked at last year was that we now have price competitive VDI environments that we didn't really have before. I always said, oh, a traditional desktop costs, I said $500, €500, 500 pounds, wherever you happen to be. You spend $500 to buy a traditional desktop or laptop computer. If you took that same $500 and bought VDI with that, 5 years ago, that was not a very high-quality VDI environment. But what we're seeing is the pricing is continuing to come down thanks to Moore's Law in the data center and these storage advancements and things like that. Whereas today, if I want to build a VDI environment for $500 per user, I can deliver a very high-quality, actually usable environment. So as I said, I can actually get there today, $500 per user, and have persistent high-performance storage with GPU, 4 gigs of RAM, tons of space, a couple of vCPUs. I can create a very compelling environment for $500 per user, which is not something I could do a few years ago. So this is all from 2013. This is everything I was talking about in the last few years when we looked at the trends. And these are the three big changes that I think really came into the world last year. So that was last year. Now, so this year, 2014, I want to talk about sort of the latest trends in the VDI and desktop virtualization space. And the way I look at it, there are sort of three major things that I'm thinking about If you ask me right now, over coffee, over beers, what's on your mind for desktop virtualization today? I've got three things. The first is DaaS, desktops as a service. And we sort of joke, many people are saying that 2014 is going to be the year of DaaS. Now, many of those people are us, but we have a website, you're watching this video now, so if we say it's a trend, well, we're talking about it. But the reality is, even if you don't believe that 2014 is the year that DaaS is real, or you don't believe that DaaS is ready for prime time, the reality is everyone is talking about DaaS. And 2014 is the year that if you decide to build VDI on your own and run it on premises, to be clear, I'm fine with that, but you have to defend that solution. There are so many options out there to where you can go buy VDI from a provider via DaaS. If you want to build it, you have to actually validate why do you want to build it yourself and not just pay for it. So like I said, whether or not you believe this is actually real, this now is an option. And if you look at it, look at the various large providers we have in this space. VMware has announced their Horizon DaaS and released Horizon DaaS. So as you know, last year VMware bought Destone. So you can actually buy VDI desktops as a service from VMware running on VMware's own cloud. Amazon announced Workspaces. So this is Amazon's DaaS offering, which they have now. They initially announced it on 2 locations in the US, US West, US East. They've recently brought Europe online with data centers out of Ireland. And they now actually just this morning have announced Sydney for the APAC region. So you can now go to Amazon Web Services and buy a Windows desktop from Amazon. We also, of course, have Citrix in this space. Now, Citrix has not entered the market themselves. Citrix does not offer their own Citrix branded from Citrix data centers DaaS, but Citrix makes the technology with XenApp and XenDesktop available to partners. So Citrix has over 3,000 service provider partners who are offering desktops as a service. And these are big companies, small companies, local, all over the world. So Citrix is in the space in a big way. If you go to citrix.com/DaaS, you can see them talking about their partnerships, even though they don't sell it on their own. And then, most interestingly, just last week, we saw Microsoft come into the market with what was rumored, as Microsoft's DaaS offering. This is the codename Mahoro. So Microsoft has announced, or well, I guess they've announced at this point, Mahoro. It's currently available in tech preview. This is remote app from Azure. So this is single published applications you can buy from Microsoft running on the Azure cloud. So now Microsoft themselves is in the DaaS space. And it's interesting. So I don't think at this point anyone can actually say DaaS is not a thing when we have VMware, Amazon Web Services, Citrix, and Microsoft all hitting the market hard with their DaaS offerings. Again, to be very, very clear, I'm not saying DaaS is for everyone. I'm not saying VDI is for everyone. VDI is going to be what, 10% of the use cases? 10% of our users might be good use cases for VDI. DaaS is just VDI that you pay someone else for. And not every VDI should be DaaS. So if VDI is a subset of all of our users, DaaS is a subset of our VDI users. DaaS is just a subset of a subset. I'm not saying this is taking over the world overnight or anything, but absolutely today, in 2014, DaaS is something that people are talking about. And I think all of us have to defend our decision. As I said, if we want to build VDI on premises, we have to defend why are we building that ourselves instead of paying one of these providers to do that for us. So DaaS is the first sort of big desktop virtualization thing that I'm thinking about quite a bit. The second biggest thing for 2014, and I wrote an article about this a couple weeks ago. I have been in the desktop virtualization space since 1997, when I first started working with Citrix WinFrame. And ever since 1997, the reality has been that Citrix has been a monopoly. Citrix had WinFrame, Citrix had MetaFrame, presentation server. Yes, there were other kind of small providers here and there, and software companies that had solutions and everything, but Citrix owned the market on terminal server, and then ultimately led into remote desktop session host. Well, earlier this year, we can now say positively that Citrix's monopoly is dead. And this is something, the article I wrote, I started this article by saying, boom, VMware announces RDSH and full app publishing. So this is something that I've been waiting for, as I said, for 17 years. This article, so look, it's from April 9th. That's like a month ago. It's already got 29,000 page views on brianmadden.com and has, I think, almost 1,400 social shares. I mean, this is by far the fastest sort of high-viewed, highly shared article on our entire site. It's funny, by the way, when you look at this, that 300-something tweets, 800 LinkedIn shares, and 35 for Google+. So go get them, Google. But this, as I said, this is something that we have been waiting for such a long time. And I'm excited that VMware has entered this market. And it's interesting, the reason I'm excited for this is the fact that now, it gives us, as customers, it gives us a choice. Because a lot of people look at this VMware Horizon 6 RDSH offering. This offering is not even released yet. It's available. It's not even in public beta yet. It's private beta, private tech previews for a few customers. A lot of people look at the features and they say things, oh, Horizon 6 can't print, which is kind of funny because those of us who've been in the Citrix kind of XenApp space for the past decade or so know all about the troubles there. And you almost want to say, yes, VMware, welcome to our world. Now please fix printing, which I never thought that 17 years later we'd still be asking our vendors to fix printing. But so yeah, Horizon 6, it can't print. Horizon 6, you can't sort applications into subfolders. So if you publish 100 apps, all of your users have to sort through all 100 apps just to find the app that they want. People say this is just a version 1. It's going to be buggy and it's crappy and it's not going to work very well. I'll say this though. The fact that this can't print, the fact that you don't have these folders and sortability, this is true. Horizon 6, it is V1. It sucks that it can't print. It sucks that all these applications are one giant folder. That's all true. But you know what? It doesn't matter. Does not matter. For me, the key important fact about Horizon 6 is not that you're all going to run out and 100 million XenApp users in the world are going to immediately overnight migrate to VMware. The value of Horizon 6 for me is its competition for Citrix. And competition is good from a customer standpoint. If anything, this will light a fire under Citrix's ass to get their act together around XenApp. So look at, XenApp, Metaframe Presentation Server XenApp had all sorts of features and was evolving over the years. And then VMware entered the VDI space. When VMware entered the VDI space, Citrix created Zen Desktop. And then Zen Desktop, when Zen Desktop first came out, it's an awful product, not very many features. But Citrix kept on adding more and more and more features to Zen Desktop. And within a few years, Zen Desktop actually had more features than XenApp. And we were writing articles about, wow, it's like, does Citrix remember there's still this XenApp thing, and XenApp is where most of their customers are and where most of our legacy is? But look at what competition does, Citrix, when they had competition in the VDI space, they got their act together and added tons and tons of features and kept on iterating very quickly on Zen Desktop. So now, whether or not VMware's Horizon 6 is actually a good product, I don't care one bit. I care that Citrix now has competition. Citrix has 100 million XenApp users in the world who are running with seamless Windows, published apps on RDSH. The fact that VMware now has that as an offering, that's amazing. I mean, the reality is, as I said, there have been other small competitors here and there for XenApp over the years, but Citrix is always sort of able to poo-poo them, and no one ever got any real traction. But think about this. Now you have a company like VMware who is already, all of Citrix's XenApp customers are also VMware customers. They love VMware. They already have relationships with the company. VMware is already in the data centers. VMware Horizon 6 is absolutely a competitive threat to Citrix. And that's going to be a huge win for us as customers. So the fact that Citrix is no longer a monopoly in XenApp, that is another sort of just gigantic, amazing thing for me. And one of the big trends I'm thinking about right now when it comes to desktop virtualization. So those are the first two. The third thing that I'm thinking about when people ask, what's on my mind for desktop virtualization now, is there's an article I wrote, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. So I'm recording this right now. I don't even know what date it is, May 21st, let's say, something like that. So 2 weeks ago was Citrix Synergy in Los Angeles. And Citrix announced something called Citrix Workspace Services. And I wrote an article at that time, a few weeks ago, called Why Citrix Workspace Services is the Future of XenApp and Zen Desktop. I want to be very clear. So a lot of people, Citrix talked about this workspace services thing, and a lot of people didn't really get it. The way Citrix presented it, it was presented as their, one more thing at the end of the keynote. So it looked like almost an afterthought, and people weren't even sure, is this a product or was it a marketing? Is it vaporware? Is it a demo? They're not even really sure what they're looking at. So I want to be very, very clear. Citrix Workspace Services is the future of XenApp and XenDesktop. It may not be in place for XenApp 8 or 9 or 10, whatever the next versions are in the next few years, but I tell you, 5 years from now, XenApp, you want to see what XenApp looks like in 5 years? Look at what Citrix is doing with Citrix Workspace Services. And if you look at the architecture of Citrix Workspace Services, I have sort of this slide up here. This is actually the real slide from Citrix's website about Citrix Workspace Services. It's not really a joke. What Citrix Workspace Services is they say, look, for the past 15 years, even as you've had WinFrame, MetaFrame, Presentation Server, XenApp, XenDesktop, these were all environments you built on premises. You installed servers, you added roles, you installed management consoles, you installed connection brokers, you installed logging and auditors and all this kind of stuff. It was a self-contained environment, and you managed it with all these management consoles. All that management talk and networking and management consoles and everything, what Citrix is doing, they say, let's take all that and move it up into the cloud. They're using Azure right now, but it could be any cloud. It's just saying move all that into the cloud. Then all the different things that plug into your XenDesktop environment, your VDI hosts, your RDSH hosts, your brokers, your file storage, your authentication, your mobile management, your application delivery, all of that stuff is available as resources that plug into this cloud-based environment. The great thing is these resources, these can exist anywhere. So these resources, you can have this cloud-based management plane and have XenApp servers in your building. You can have XenApp servers at a co-location facility. You can have XenApp instances you buy from Amazon and plug into this. The point is, it does not matter. So, and this applies to your XenApp servers, your XenDesktop servers, your data, you plug in ShareFile, Dropbox, file services, FTP, all this kind of stuff. The idea is, this is the hybrid cloud. And Microsoft, VMware, Gartner, a lot of folks are talking about this hybrid cloud today, but I don't think that those of us in our industry, in the desktop virtualization space, have done a real good job of thinking about what this actually means for us. So the hybrid cloud, this is the idea that this whole on-premises versus off-premises thing, in 5 years, that's not going to matter. Another way to phrase that for us, VDI versus DaaS. Do I build the VDI myself, or do I have someone else host the VDI for me? Today, in 2014, that's a big decision. In 2019, that will not matter one bit. You have VDI. Where the VDI comes from, it's coming from me, it's coming from you, it's coming from over there, it's coming from both of us together. That will not matter at all. So this is what Citrix is talking about with their Citrix Workspace Services, where all of your resources, your data, your files, everything comes from all over the place. To be very clear, the Citrix Workspace Services, this is not XenApp in the cloud. This is not XenDesktop in the cloud. If you want to run everything on-premises with Citrix Workspace Services, you can do that. But the idea is if you build this whole on-premises Citrix Workspace Services environment, and then you want 2 more sessions, you can click bink and buy them for 15 cents an hour from Amazon instead of building a server yourself. Or build a server yourself, add it into the pool, and connect that way. It does not matter. It will not matter in the future. Of course, Citrix did not invent this. Microsoft talks about this with Azure. So, Microsoft has in the past talked about how future versions of Windows Server, they're not so much standalone Windows Server instances. They're all tiny little Azure nodes. So I look at it as Windows Server traditionally has been the OS. Think about it. Windows Server is no longer the OS. Windows Server is like the hardware interface. The OS is Azure. When you buy Windows Server 2015 or whatever comes next, you're not buying Windows Server that you install in your IT department. You're buying literally a little mini Azure node. And then you plug all these Windows Server 2015 or whatever they happen to be nodes together, and you can run your own sort of cloud OS completely on premises. You can have yours also connecting to a co-location site. Amazon can run it, Microsoft can run it, it can be run wherever you want, and it doesn't matter. So the future of Windows Server, the future of the type of servers that we work with, is the fact that they're all sort of cloud connected, and it makes no difference as to whether they're in an actual cloud at a co-location facility or in your own building. And that's going to apply to, that's what Citrix is doing with Citrix Workspace Services. That's what Microsoft is doing with Azure. Certainly that's what VMware is doing. We'll see more from them at VMworld in a few months. So, but that's a big deal, because as I said, the hybrid cloud is something that people have been talking about for 2 or 3 years now. But now we're starting to see very specific examples of the hybrid cloud being applied to our world in the desktop virtualization environment. And as I said, you want to look at the future of Zen Desktop, the future of Zen App, the future of Horizon, the future of VDI and DaaS. It is the fact that we have Windows desktops, Windows apps, we have data, we have mobile apps, we have web apps, we have authentication, we have performance. It all runs anywhere and everywhere. You can do it on premises, you can do it in the cloud, you can do it anywhere. It does not matter. So those are the main 3 themes that I'm thinking of. Like I said, on my mind right now, I'm thinking about desktops as a service. I'm thinking about the fact that Citrix's monopoly is dead. And I'm thinking about the fact that these hybrid cloud environments are truly the biggest change that we've seen in my entire 19 years in IT. So anyway, that's how I set up the conversation at BriForum. We've got almost 300 people here in London with 4 breakout rooms over these 2 days, and everyone is getting into all the geeky details about all this kind of stuff. So by the way, we have BriForum coming up in Boston in July. So if you would like to attend BriForum, that one's even bigger actually. 3 days instead of 2 days. 5 breakout rooms instead of 4 breakout rooms. So hopefully we'll see you in July in Boston. In the meantime, continue to, we'll be covering everything on brianmadden.com, and we'll take these conversations as well as everything else in the end-user computing space, consumerization, and mobility space. We'll keep our eyes on everything here on brianmadden.com. So thank you so much for taking the time, and we'll see you soon.